cold November day, 2013. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever thought of doing any gardening? Last year I was allowed to work on my brother-in-law's garden from last January, and what I inherited was this garden here. Now, if you can think of this garden as being covered with 2 to 3 foot weeds, and it was all humps and hollows, and it wasn't a very pleasant prospect. The garden itself is about between 8 and 9 metres wide, and it's about 17 or 18 metres long. It was humps and hollows and full of rocks and stones and barbed wire, glass, and all sorts of unwanted bits and pieces. That's whenever I got it. But I said to myself, I would like to do something with this. I'd never really gardened before, and I had always watched gardening programs and said to myself, I'll give it a go. Being a novice gardener, you can take on board some of the things I say or not. This is what I did. First of all, I took a fork to the garden and turned over the sods right over this whole area. Now this job was not done in a day or two. I took my time at it, maybe 2 hours per day, and that was about enough. So having turned over all the sods, turned them upside down so that the roots were pointing up, I left it for a week or two, and then came back and used a heavy weed killer. Now, heavy weed killer, I wasn't happy to use any kind of weed killer, but needs must. So put the weed killer on it, then left it for 3 weeks, and then I started to dig it over once again. Very, very hard work, back-breaking, but once you get this completed, then life is an awful lot easier as regards gardening. So I dug it over again, I forked it and took out all the root systems that I could, and took out all the bricks, obviously, all the barbed wire, all the piping, all the other debris from a garden that had never seen a fork or a spade for over 50 years. You'll see now, having had last year's harvest, I've covered the whole garden as best possible with plastic sheeting, and of course this has been done to try and keep down the weeds that might grow over winter. It's an easy way of weed control. Once I start to get into gardening again, maybe March time, then obviously all of this will have to come up. Right, last year I dug this all over, weed killered it, took out all the roots, and then I used the rake to flatten it down as best possible, level it down. Next job was to dig out all these paths here, and then with the dug out soil you made beds. Now, I would not advise anybody coming on an old patch of ground full of weeds, as I did, I would not advise anybody to use a rotavator. I was tempted, but I'm glad I didn't use the rotavator because what would have happened would have been that I would have just cut up all the root systems, and more of the tall grasses would have grown from each cut off piece of root. So my problems would have been multiplied. So resist the temptation to use a rotavator unless the ground is reasonably well cleared. Last year, just to give you some idea what this patch of back garden produced, here we have the remains of my strawberries, and you can see that some are still trying to fruit even in November. That one has been eaten. So there's my strawberries. This here I've put in 2 loganberry bushes and 2 tayberry bushes. They didn't fruit last year, obviously, because they were just put in. So hopefully next year I will have some fruit off them. Down here I had a bed of onions, and I had also the remainder of the bed was potatoes. They were pinks, and they produced a tremendous crop. Over here is the remains of my rhubarb. It'll come again next year. And in this bed here I had turnips, I had beetroot, and carrots. Over here I had carrots and parsnips. Parsnips did particularly well. If I had thinned my carrots out, I would have got a better crop. As it were, they were all entangled in round each other and didn't grow well. Here I had a bed of beans, and next to it was a bed of sweet pea. They did particularly well, they were good. Lettuce were all up at the top, and you can see there's some parsley as well. I forgot to mention I had celery down at the bottom as well. It did very, very well. To attract insects and bees and all sorts of pollinating insects, I let this whole area grow out in just flowers, wildflowers, anything else that was going to create a bloom. You can see that there's plenty of nasturtium growing still in November. There's the remains of lupin. There's wild foxglove. There's daisies. And there's weeds. There's a couple of weeds there as well. But I found that they attracted the bees and wasps, so I was happy with those. When I came to this garden, I found that it had a greenhouse, and in the greenhouse I was able to grow last year, and these are the remains of tomato plants, and I had cucumber and courgette, and of course you can spot the different tools that I used. That's my fork and my spade, and what else I found very useful: secateurs, a hoe, and my rake is somewhere about here as well. Can't see it just at the moment. Oh, there it is. So those tools are basically all you need. Yes, watering can down below, and back behind here is an essential as well, which is my trusty wheelbarrow, which is a bit of a wreck but serves the purpose. What hose and reel from Tesco for about 40 quid, and it watered the entire garden. Now what I would say is, if I can do this, you can do it. Think of it this way, for a little hard work, and this is kind of the work that you would normally do. I mean, I used to go to the gym. I used to pay for gym membership, which was between £300 and £500 a year, and this is my workout. I don't need gym membership now. This workout that I do, maybe 10 hours a week, provides me with fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, and good therapy. I would recommend it to anyone. Get out there, do a bit of work, and you will be amazed at what comes up out of the ground, and you will have so big a harvest that you will be able to give it to friends and relatives, and they too will be amazed. Get going.